Yeah, so I am 100% responsible for my experience in this life. That's the post you're talking about, right? Yeah, so I am 100% responsible for my experience in this life. What does that mean? Well, there were these twins that they were identical twins, and they were born, and they're this is a truly researched project. They took these twins, and one of them was in prison, and one of them was very, very successful. And when they went in and looked at them, and they were doing the interview, trying to, they were doing an assessment from a scientific standpoint, what they found out was they had a father that was very, very abusive. I mean, they grew up in an unbelievably difficult home. And so they went in and they asked them about the situation, and they both pretty much agreed that the reality that the abuse was there, and that the father was very abusive and alcoholic and physically, that was all there. But when they talked to them, the experience of what happened was completely different. When they talked to the guy that was in prison, the guy that was in prison talked down. His father, I didn't have any other choice. This was the only road I could see. Like how could I become anything but this? I mean, my father taught me how to be this, and I basically became my father, right? And then they went to his brother, fairly successful, was running a fairly successful brand, and said, well, what is it that, what was your experience? He said, well, I had to thank my father because, my father taught me to be independent. My father taught me that life was hard. My father taught me that I had to drive past. And I looked at him and said, I don't want to be that. So I have to thank my father for showing me what not to be, so that I could truly learn what it was that I truly wanted to be, right? And so the question is their experience different? Yes. Or the experience was completely different for the two of them. Was the reality the same? Of course the reality was the same. I'm not talking about some foo-foo, like think it therefore it is kind of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. Like Tony teaches, if you've got weeds in your garden, you got weeds. You can't go outside and chant, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, there are no weeds. Like you got weeds, you got weeds. You need to pull them out, right? Right. So I'm not talking about sitting there meditating, seeing yourself and being this thing, and all of a sudden the reality. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what is your experience in your world? What are you choosing? What are the belief systems that you're choosing? And when you tell me as a client, you tell me that the reason why your company is declining because of 2008 and you've never recovered, that was going on 9 years ago. So you can't blame where you're at today on something that happened 9 years ago. There's too many people in this world blaming their position, where they're at in this life, based upon where they were at in their childhood. Now, I will give you that, coming from a guy, you're talking about a guy who did not have the most the most loving kind of like non-challenging past. Like my past is checkered. Right, and you're so it's not like I don't know what difficulty looks like. I was there, I witnessed it, I experienced it. But what I chose to experience through that was a completely different world, right? I'm that way because of when I was a kid. Right? You've got to choose an empowering experience, because if you don't, you're going to continue to experience the same things over and over. Tony said losers react, leaders anticipate. I'm going to take it a step farther. If you're in a world where you're choosing to let your reality define you, and you're using unempowering experiences, you're going to continue to see the same problems and never reach past them to really feel what you can truly become. What most people can do in life is disappointing. Let me rephrase that. What most people can do in life is fairly dramatic. It's almost miraculous. What people will do is disappointing. Right? And it's based upon the belief systems and the experience that we choose to label our reality, the colors and the definitions that we choose to give in our experience. That's what allows us the ability to stay stuck in where we're at. Right? And so what is something you can do today that will break you out of this limiting belief system? Is it true that 2008 is the reason where you're at now? No, it's not, is it? Now, if we've got a limiting belief system that says my reality has limited me in some way, then there's no way for us to break through the problem because now we're a victim of our circumstances. I don't want you to be a victim of your circumstances. You don't want to be a victim of your circumstances. You don't. You don't want to be a victim of your circumstances. And you don't have to be. There's too many examples that we can come up with of people that are in your industry, that have a life like yours, that have been successful. Can you name 5? Can you name 5 examples of people that were experiencing life the way you are, that chose to move in a different direction, that were where you're at and somehow broke out of it? Right? Right. It might take a little work, right? But it gives you the ability to find that, because once you start tugging on that thread, Tony says, Tony breaks you through. The first question you have to ask yourself is, once you've defined your experience, you have to ask yourself, is that true? Is it true? And then what is true? Exactly. Because here's the thing, once you fully grasp this and you take full charge, now we can start to look at tactics, strategies, tools. We can take that map that we've developed and we can make it the information active, so we can create what I call functional strategies, so we can move you out. Right? But you've got to take a look at your experience. You've got to define your experience in a way that's empowering you. Never let somebody else tell your story, and never believe a prediction that doesn't empower you. Let me say that again. Never believe a prediction that doesn't empower you, because there's no value in that. And yet here you are choosing to believe this. And let me tell you, from speaking with 10,000 different business owners ranging from this to that, I can tell you that the stories that you've got built up, that's all they are stories. I've got too many examples in my back pocket of people that have been where you're at, that have broken free, that blew right past that story that you're telling yourself. If you keep buying into the stories you're telling yourself, how will you ever experience all the various strategies that are out there that will allow you to overcome the obstacle that you found in front of you? There's no way you can see it. It's just not possible. You've got to alter your psychology to something that's more empowering, to allow you the ability to bust free. And the only way you're going to get clear of that is to start to develop some more empowering stories. So let's work today to start to develop some more empowering stories. What are 3 empowering stories that you're going to choose to take on today that will shift the world for you just by 2 millimeters? We can do a radical shift, or we can just do a 2 millimeter shift, but at least 2 millimeters. What are 3 empowering belief systems that you can schedule today, that you can come up with today, that will allow you the ability to start to shift your perspective and your experience in this world?